In the weathered plains of Colorado's Cottonwood Basin, where fortunes rise and fall with the changing winds, a struggling rancher named Luke Carson made a fateful decision that would forever alter his destiny. On a sweltering July morning in 1897, he agreed to marry Eleanor Whitmore, the 75-year-old matriarch of the legendary Thunder Ridge Ranch. Their marriage lasted precisely 11 days before Luke discovered a truth so staggering it would shake the very ground beneath his feet. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The summer of 1897 scorched the Colorado plains with unprecedented fury. Luke Carson stood on the cracked earth outside the ramshackle cabin he called home, watching dust storms dance across the horizon. At 28, his hands bore the calluses of a man twice his age, testimony to years of endless toil with little reward. The drought had claimed what little remained of his failed cattle operation, leaving him with nothing but 3 emaciated horses and mounting debts to the Silverton Bank. Luke wasn't always destined for hardship. His mother, Sarah Carson, had been the daughter of a prosperous merchant in Denver. She'd fallen in love with his father, Matthew Carson, a charismatic but reckless man with grand visions of building a cattle empire. Those dreams crumbled under the weight of Matthew's gambling addiction and poor business decisions. By the time Luke was 12, typhoid had claimed both parents, leaving him to fend for himself among the harsh realities of frontier life. For 16 years, Luke had scratched out an existence working the most dangerous jobs the territory offered. He'd broken wild mustangs that no other man dared approach, guided wagon trains through treacherous mountain passes, and worked the mines during the silver boom until a cave-in nearly claimed his life. Every penny he earned went toward buying back parcels of his father's lost land, only to watch helplessly as drought and disease destroyed his modest herd. The morning of July 15th found Luke in the Dry Creek settlement, a cluster of weathered buildings that barely qualified as a town. He'd ridden in on his aging gelding, Winchester, hoping to find temporary work at the McKenna spread. Instead, he found himself staring at a foreclosure notice posted outside the general store, his name prominently displayed among those who owed the bank substantial sums. "Carson!" The gruff voice belonged to Jedediah Hawkins, owner of the town's only boarding house and saloon. "Heard you might be looking for work. Got a proposition that might interest you." Luke followed Hawkins into the dim interior of the establishment, where the smell of stale whiskey and tobacco hung heavy in the air. The older man poured 2 glasses of rotgut and slid one across the scarred wooden bar. "Eleanor Whitmore's looking for help up at Thunder Ridge," Hawkins said, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "Paying triple the going rate. Thunder Ridge Ranch." The name alone commanded respect throughout Colorado's eastern plains. Spanning nearly 30,000 acres of prime grazing land, it represented everything Luke's father had dreamed of achieving. Eleanor Whitmore, its formidable owner, was the subject of countless local legends. Some said she'd arrived from Boston society with a fortune in railroad money. Others claimed she'd won the ranch in a high-stakes poker game. All agreed that she ruled her domain with an iron will that brooked no opposition. "She doesn't hire outsiders," Luke replied, skepticism evident in his voice, "especially not down-on-their-luck cowboys with nothing to their name." Hawkins leaned closer, his breath reeking of cheap whiskey. "Word is she's getting on in years. Turned 75 this spring. No kin to speak of. Might be she's looking for more than just hired help, if you catch my meaning." The implication hung in the air between them. Luke downed his whiskey in one burning gulp, considering the unspoken suggestion. Pride warred with desperation in his mind. The next morning, Luke rode toward Thunder Ridge, his few possessions tied behind Winchester's saddle. The landscape transformed as he approached the ranch. Scrub grass gave way to verdant pastures, irrigated by an intricate system of canals. Herds of prime Hereford cattle grazed contentedly, their coats gleaming with health. The ranch house itself took his breath away. 3 stories of limestone and timber rose majestically from a gentle knoll, surrounded by meticulously maintained gardens. A dozen outbuildings spread behind it, all painted crisp white with deep green trim. Even the fencing spoke of wealth beyond Luke's comprehension, not rough-hewn logs, but milled lumber painted to match the buildings. A stern-faced man with military bearing intercepted Luke at the main gate. "State your business," he demanded, one hand resting meaningfully on the Colt at his hip. "Luke Carson, I heard Mrs. Whitmore might be hiring." The man, who introduced himself as Benjamin Holbrook, ranch foreman, studied Luke with calculating eyes. "We don't usually take on drifters," he said finally, "but Mrs. Whitmore will make that decision. Wait here." 30 minutes later, Luke found himself in Eleanor Whitmore's study, a room that rivaled the finest establishments he'd glimpsed in Denver. Persian rugs covered polished hardwood floors, and floor-to-ceiling bookshelves held volumes that spoke of education and refinement. Eleanor Whitmore herself defied every expectation. Despite her advanced years, she sat ramrod straight behind an imposing mahogany desk. Her snow-white hair was arranged in an intricate style that spoke of Eastern sophistication, and her piercing blue eyes seemed to see straight through him. She wore a high-collared dress of deep purple silk, adorned with a cameo brooch that probably cost more than Luke had earned in his lifetime. "Mr. Carson," she said, her voice surprisingly strong, "Benjamin tells me you're seeking employment." "Yes, ma'am. I'm a hard worker, experienced with cattle and horses." She studied him with unnerving intensity. "Tell me about yourself, and please don't insult my intelligence with fabrications. I've already made inquiries about you in town." The directness caught Luke off guard. He found himself telling her everything: his parents' deaths, his struggles to rebuild what his father had lost, the crushing weight of debts that threatened to bury him. Eleanor listened without interruption, her expression revealing nothing. When he finished, she rose and moved to the window, gazing out over her domain. "I didn't bring you here to discuss ranch work, Mr. Carson," she said finally. "I have a proposition of an entirely different nature." She turned to face him, her blue eyes sharp as steel. "I need a husband, not for companionship or romance, but for legal and practical purposes. I have no heirs, and I refuse to let Thunder Ridge fall into the hands of vultures when I'm gone." Luke sat in stunned silence as she outlined her proposal. A marriage in name only, with separate living quarters and lives. In exchange, his debts would be cleared immediately, and he would inherit Thunder Ridge upon her death. She required only 3 things: absolute discretion, unwavering loyalty, and patience. "Why me?" Luke managed to ask when he found his voice. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "Because you understand what it means to fight for something against impossible odds, because you have nothing to lose and everything to gain, and because, frankly, you're desperate enough to accept such an unconventional arrangement." The brutal honesty of her assessment stung, but Luke couldn't deny its accuracy. "You have until sunset to decide," Eleanor concluded. "Judge Matthews will perform the ceremony tomorrow morning if you accept. If not, you'll leave Thunder Ridge with my best wishes and never speak of this conversation." Luke spent the afternoon touring the ranch with Holbrook, his mind reeling from the magnitude of Eleanor's offer. Thunder Ridge was more than just a cattle operation. It was an empire encompassing mineral rights, timber contracts, and investments throughout the territory. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, Luke made his decision. Whatever Eleanor Whitmore's motives, this represented his only chance to escape the cycle of poverty that had defined his life. The wedding took place the following morning in Thunder Ridge's library, witnessed only by Holbrook and Eleanor's longtime housekeeper, Martha Blackwood. Luke signed the marriage certificate with trembling hands, acutely aware that he was entering into something far more complex than a simple business arrangement. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Luke awoke in his lavish quarters of Thunder Ridge's West Wing to the sounds of activity that signaled a working ranch at dawn. The four-poster bed with its Egyptian cotton sheets felt foreign against his skin, a stark contrast to the straw mattress he'd known all his life. His modest belongings had been unpacked into a wardrobe that could have held 20 times their number, and someone had laid out fresh clothing for him, a crisp white shirt, tailored pants, and boots that gleamed with fresh polish. As he dressed, Luke caught his reflection in the full-length mirror and barely recognized himself. The transformation had begun. Breakfast was served in the smaller of two dining rooms, where Eleanor sat reviewing correspondence with spectacles perched on her nose. She looked up as he entered, her assessment brief but thorough. "Good morning, Mr. Carson," she said formally, "or should I say, Mr. Whitmore?" "Luke is fine," he replied, uncomfortable with either title. "Very well, Luke, and you shall call me Eleanor when we're alone. In public, however, we must maintain appearances." She gestured to the chair beside her. "Martha has prepared breakfast. Afterward, Benjamin will begin your education in Thunder Ridge's operations." Over eggs, bacon, and biscuits finer than any Luke had tasted, Eleanor outlined his schedule. Mornings would be spent learning the ranch's physical operations, afternoons devoted to understanding the business empire she'd built. "Thunder Ridge is more than cattle and land," she explained. "We hold shares in the Denver and Rio Grande Railroad, own 3 silver mines in Leadville, and maintain investments in banks from Chicago to San Francisco. You'll need to understand it all." The magnitude of what he'd married into began to dawn on Luke. This wasn't just a ranch, it was a financial kingdom. After breakfast, Benjamin Holbrook arrived to escort Luke on his first comprehensive tour. The foreman's demeanor had shifted, subtly. While still stern, there was now a grudging respect in his manner. "Mrs. Whitmore built all this herself," Holbrook said, as they rode past immaculate corrals where prize-breeding stock grazed. When she arrived 15 years ago, Thunder Ridge was failing. Her late husband, Charles Whitmore, had been a decent man but a poor businessman. She turned everything around within 2 years. They visited the northern pastures, where an intricate irrigation system transformed arid land into lush grazing grounds. Holbrook explained how Eleanor had hired engineers from California to design the waterworks, defying local skeptics who claimed such projects impossible. "She sees possibilities where others see obstacles," Holbrook noted. "Remember that as you learn this place." At the eastern boundary, they encountered a group of cowboys mending fence. The men tipped their hats respectfully to Luke, though he caught the curious glances they exchanged. News of his marriage had clearly spread among the ranch hands. "They're wondering if you'll last," Holbrook said bluntly as they rode on. "We've had others try to win Mrs. Whitmore's favor over the years. None succeeded." "What happened to them?" Luke asked. "Some she sent packing when they proved inadequate. Others—" Holbrook's expression darkened. "Let's just say Thunder Ridge has its share of stories." Their tour continued to the ranch's private cemetery, a peaceful grove shaded by cottonwood trees. Luke was surprised to see only 3 headstones. Charles Whitmore, dated 1882, a child named James, who'd lived only 2 days in 1868. "And an unmarked grave with fresh flowers. Who's buried there?" Luke asked, pointing to the unmarked site. Holbrook's jaw tightened. "Best not to ask questions about that one. Some things at Thunder Ridge are better left undisturbed." As they returned to the main compound, Luke noticed a small, isolated cabin, nestled in a grove of aspens, about a mile from the main house. Unlike the other buildings, it appeared abandoned, its windows dark and shuttered. "What's that place?" he inquired. "The old foreman's cabin," Holbrook replied curtly. "Nobody goes there anymore. Mrs. Whitmore's orders." That afternoon, Luke met with Eleanor in her study for his first lesson in Thunder Ridge's financial operations. She produced ledgers detailing investments that spanned multiple industries and regions. Her grasp of complex financial instruments astounded him. This was no simple ranch woman, but a business magnate who happened to own cattle. "The key to survival," Eleanor explained, "is diversification. When cattle prices fall, our mining interests sustain us. When silver markets crash, our railroad investments provide stability." She showed him correspondence from powerful figures across the country. Senators, industrialists, even a letter from President McKinley himself thanking her for her contributions to the Republican Party. Power isn't just about money, Luke. It's about influence, connections, and knowing which strings to pull. As the days passed, Luke's education intensified. He learned to read market reports, understand commodity futures, and navigate the complex web of political relationships that protected Thunder Ridge's interests. Eleanor proved to be a demanding but patient teacher, correcting his mistakes without condescension. During the evenings, they dined together in the formal dining room, maintaining the appearance of a properly married couple for the benefit of the staff. Their conversations ranged from ranch operations to national politics, and Luke found himself increasingly impressed by Eleanor's intellect and insight. On the 5th day of their marriage, Luke encountered something that gave him pause. While exploring the main house's library, he discovered a hidden compartment behind a row of books. Inside were newspaper clippings, legal documents, and photographs that told a darker story of Thunder Ridge's history. The clippings detailed a series of mysterious deaths and disappearances dating back to 1875. Ranch hands who'd vanished without a trace, a neighboring rancher found dead under suspicious circumstances, and most disturbing, an article about Eleanor's first husband's death, ruled accidental but with lingering questions. Before he could examine the documents further, Martha Blackwood appeared in the doorway. Her usual warm demeanor had vanished, replaced by something cold and watchful. "Mr. Carson," she said quietly, "I'd advise you to replace those items exactly as you found them. Some doors, once opened, cannot be closed again." That night at dinner, Eleanor seemed to sense his unease. "Is something troubling you, Luke?" He hesitated, then decided on a partial truth. "This place has many secrets." Eleanor's smile didn't reach her eyes. "All old houses do. The question is whether those secrets are worth uncovering." The following morning, Luke rode out alone to check the southern boundary. As he crested a hill overlooking the vast expanse of Thunder Ridge, he noticed riders approaching from the neighboring Crow's Nest Ranch. 3 men, led by someone who sat his horse with an air of authority. The leader introduced himself as Harrison Blackwell, owner of Crow's Nest, and, as Luke would learn, Eleanor's most persistent rival. Blackwell was perhaps 50, with silver temples and eyes that missed nothing. "So you're the new husband," Blackwell said, his tone making it clear what he thought of the arrangement. "Eleanor certainly moves quickly when she sets her mind to something." "Is there something I can help you with, Mr. Blackwell?" "Just a friendly warning," Blackwell replied. "Eleanor Whitmore has a way of disposing of things and people that no longer serve her purposes. Ask yourself why a woman of her wealth and influence would suddenly take a penniless drifter as a husband." Before Luke could respond, Blackwell wheeled his horse around. "Watch your back, Carson. Thunder Ridge has buried more than a few men who thought they'd found their fortune here." The encounter left Luke unsettled. That evening, he found Eleanor in her private study, poring over what appeared to be architectural plans. When she looked up, her expression was uncharacteristically vulnerable. "Ah, Luke, I was just reviewing plans for the new irrigation system." She gestured to a chair. "Sit with me." There's something we should discuss." What followed was the first truly personal conversation they'd shared. Eleanor spoke of her early life in Boston, her first marriage to Charles Whitmore, and the child they'd lost. Her voice softened when she mentioned James, the son who'd lived only 2 days. "Charles never recovered from that loss," she said quietly. "He sought solace in drink and died 5 years later. I was left alone in a hostile territory with a failing ranch and vultures circling." "Like Harrison Blackwell?" Eleanor's eyes sharpened. "You've met him then?" "Yes, Harrison has coveted Thunder Ridge for years. He's not the only one." She rose and moved to a cabinet, extracting a small wooden box. Inside was a collection of letters, all threatening in nature. "When a woman holds power in a man's world, she makes enemies. These are just from the past year." Luke examined the letters. Anonymous threats, offers to buy Thunder Ridge at insultingly low prices, and warnings of dire consequences if Eleanor didn't sell. One particularly chilling note simply read, "Even queens can fall." The 7th day of Luke's marriage dawned with an unseasonable chill that seemed to seep into Thunder Ridge's very foundations. Luke rose early, unable to shake the sense of unease that had plagued him since his encounter with Harrison Blackwell. As he dressed, he noticed an envelope had been slipped beneath his door during the night. The note inside was unsigned. "The truth about Eleanor Whitmore lies in the old foreman's cabin. Midnight. Come alone." Luke stared at the message, his mind racing. Should he ignore it as a crude attempt at manipulation, or did it offer answers to the questions that increasingly troubled him? At breakfast, Eleanor appeared distracted, her usual sharp focus dulled by what seemed like pain. She declined food, accepting only tea that Martha Blackwood prepared with particular care. "Are you unwell?" Luke asked, genuine concern in his voice. "A touch of my old ailment," Eleanor replied dismissively. "Nothing that won't pass. However, I must ask you to handle today's meeting with the bank representatives alone. They're arriving from Denver to discuss our expansion into Montana territory." Luke's stomach tightened. He'd observed several such meetings, but had never led one himself. "Are you certain? Perhaps we should postpone—" "Nonsense," Eleanor interrupted. "You'll need to master these negotiations eventually. Consider it part of your education." As Luke prepared for the meeting, Martha pulled him aside in the hallway. Her usually stern face showed traces of worry. "She's getting worse," the housekeeper confided. "The doctor says it's her heart, though she refuses to acknowledge it. We've kept it quiet, but—" She glanced around nervously. "You should know what you've truly inherited, Mr. Carson." Before Luke could press for details, Benjamin Holbrook appeared to escort him to the meeting. The bank representatives proved to be shrewd negotiators, testing Luke's grasp of Thunder Ridge's financial position with probing questions. To his surprise, Luke found himself rising to the challenge, drawing on Eleanor's teachings to navigate. "The complex discussion. Mrs. Whitmore chose well," the senior banker remarked as they concluded. "You have a natural instinct for business, Mr. Carson." The praise should have pleased Luke, but instead it deepened his growing conflict. Was he becoming complicit in whatever dark secrets Thunder Ridge harbored? That afternoon, while Eleanor rested, Luke explored more of the vast library. He discovered a journal hidden behind a false panel in the desk, entries dating back to 1883, written in Eleanor's precise hand. The pages revealed a woman far more complex than the stern matriarch she presented to the world. One entry from 1885 caught his attention. "The Peterson matter is resolved. Benjamin handled it as instructed. Sometimes protecting what we've built requires difficult choices. Charles would have been too weak to do what was necessary. I am not." Luke's blood ran cold. The Peterson matter, he'd seen that name in the newspaper clippings. Jacob Peterson, a neighboring rancher who'd challenged Thunder Ridge's water rights and died in what was ruled a hunting accident. As evening fell, Luke found himself drawn to the windows overlooking the abandoned foreman's cabin. The mysterious note weighed heavily on his mind. When the clock struck 11, he made his decision. The night air bit at his face as Luke approached the cabin on foot, having left his horse tethered far enough away to avoid detection. The building loomed dark and forbidding, its windows like empty eye sockets. The door creaked open at his touch, revealing an interior thick with dust and shadows. "I wondered if you'd come," a voice said from the darkness. Luke spun around to find an elderly man emerging from the shadows. Despite his age, he moved with purpose, his eyes sharp in the moonlight filtering through the grimy windows. "Who are you?" Luke demanded. "Samuel Hawthorne," the man replied. "I was foreman here for 20 years before..." Before, Eleanor decided. "I knew too much." "What do you mean?" Samuel lit a lantern, its glow revealing a face etched with bitterness and regret. "Thunder Ridge wasn't built on cattle and clever investments alone, boy. Eleanor Whitmore is the most ruthless woman I have ever known. Those who stood in her way had a habit of meeting unfortunate ends." Over the next hour, Samuel painted a picture of Eleanor that chilled Luke to his core. He spoke of rivals who disappeared, of judges bought and sold, of accidents that weren't accidents at all. "The unmarked grave in the cemetery," Samuel said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "That's Rebecca Morrison. She was Charles Whitmore's mistress, pregnant with his child when he died. Eleanor couldn't bear the thought of an heir with a stronger claim than her own. The official story was that Rebecca left town, but Luke felt sick. Why are you telling me this? Because you're the latest pawn in Eleanor's game. She's dying, Carson. The heart condition she tries to hide will claim her within months, but she's determined to control Thunder Ridge, even from beyond the grave." "What do you mean?" Samuel pulled out a document, a copy of Eleanor's original will. "This was drawn up last year. Everything was to go to various charities and institutions. Then you appeared, and suddenly there's a new will with a new heir. Ask yourself why." As Luke studied the document, Samuel continued. "She needs someone she can mold, someone desperate enough to preserve her legacy without questioning its foundations. But there's something she doesn't know, something about you." Luke looked up sharply. "What?" "Your mother, Sarah Carson. She wasn't just a merchant's daughter, she was Eleanor's younger sister." The revelation hit Luke like a physical blow. "That's impossible. Eleanor disowned her when she married your father, struck her name from all family records. But blood is blood, Carson. You're Eleanor's nephew, her only living relative, and somehow I think she knows." Luke staggered from the cabin, his mind reeling. The pieces began falling into place. Eleanor's sudden interest in him, her willingness to entrust her empire to a stranger. But if she knew their connection, why maintain the pretense? Dawn found Luke on horseback, riding hard toward the eastern boundary of Thunder Ridge. He needed space to think, to process everything he'd learned. As he crested a ridge, he spotted riders approaching. Harrison Blackwell again, but this time accompanied by what appeared to be a sheriff's posse. "Carson," Blackwell called out, "we need to talk about Eleanor Whitmore." The sheriff, a weathered man named Tom Garrett, produced a warrant. "We're investigating allegations of fraud and possible murder, Mr. Carson. Several former Thunder Ridge employees have come forward with disturbing claims." Luke's loyalty to Eleanor warred with his growing suspicions. "Mrs. Whitmore is ill," he said carefully. "Perhaps this could wait." "People have been waiting for justice for years," Blackwell interrupted. "Your wife has built an empire on blood and deception. The question is, are you her next victim or her accomplice?" As the posse rode toward the main house, Luke followed, his thoughts in turmoil. He found Eleanor in her study, looking frailer than he'd ever seen her. When he informed her of the sheriff's arrival, she merely nodded. "I've been expecting this," she said calmly. "Harrison has been gathering his forces for months." "Eleanor," Luke said urgently, "I need to know the truth. About everything. About the deaths. About Thunder Ridge. About my mother." Eleanor's composure cracked slightly. "Your mother, Sarah, your sister." For the first time since Luke had known her, Eleanor Whitmore looked truly vulnerable. She sank into her chair, age suddenly weighing heavily upon her. "How did you find out?" "It doesn't matter. Is it true?" Eleanor closed her eyes. "Yes. Sarah was my sister, my beautiful, foolish sister who threw away everything for love." She opened her eyes, fixing Luke with an intense stare. "I didn't know who you were when we met. The resemblance to your father threw me off. It wasn't until I saw your mother's locket among your things that I realized—" The sound of horses in the courtyard interrupted them. Sheriff Garrett and his men had arrived. "Eleanor," Luke pressed, "the allegations they're making, the deaths, the disappeared rivals. Tell me it's not true." Eleanor rose with difficulty, straightening her spine with visible effort. "The world I entered as a young widow was brutal, Luke. I did what was necessary to survive and thrive. Every empire is built on difficult choices." "Did you have people killed?" Before she could answer, Benjamin Holbrook burst into the study. "Mrs. Whitmore, the sheriff insists on speaking with you immediately. There's also news from the bank. Someone's been attempting to freeze Thunder Ridge's accounts." Eleanor's eyes hardened with familiar steel. "It seems the final battle for Thunder Ridge has begun." She turned to Luke. "The question is, which side are you on?" The tension in Eleanor's study was palpable as Sheriff Garrett entered, his boots echoing against the hardwood floor. Behind him, Harrison Blackwell wore an expression of barely contained triumph. Benjamin Holbrook positioned himself protectively near Eleanor, his hand hovering near the pistol at his hip. "Eleanor Whitmore," Sheriff Garrett began formally, "I have warrants to search Thunder Ridge and questions regarding several suspicious deaths dating back to 1883. Eleanor remained remarkably composed. "On whose testimony, Sheriff?" "The word of a bitter rival and disgruntled former employees. We have sworn affidavits from 3 witnesses," Garrett replied, producing a stack of papers, "including Samuel Hawthorne, your former foreman." Luke watched Eleanor's face carefully. A flicker of something, anger, fear, crossed her features before she regained control. "Samuel always was prone to dramatics," she said dismissively, "especially after I discovered he'd been embezzling from Thunder Ridge accounts." "That's a lie," Blackwell interjected. "You destroyed his reputation to silence him." "Enough," Sheriff Garrett commanded. "Mrs. Whitmore will need access to your financial records and correspondence. We're particularly interested in documents relating to Jacob Peterson, Rebecca Morrison, and the 3 ranch hands who disappeared in 1886. Luke felt the weight of Eleanor's gaze upon him. In that moment, he stood at a crossroads. Support the woman who'd elevated him from poverty, or seek justice for possible victims. "Sheriff," Luke said, surprising himself with his steady voice, "as Mrs. Whitmore's husband and legal representative, I insist on reviewing these warrants before any search begins." Blackwell's face flushed with anger. "Already protecting your benefactor, Carson, or should I say nephew?" The room fell silent. Eleanor's sharp intake of breath was audible. "That's right," Blackwell continued smugly. "We know about your family connection. Makes this whole marriage even more suspicious, doesn't it?" Sheriff Garrett looked between Luke and Eleanor with new interest. "Is this true?" "It is," Eleanor admitted, "though I only discovered the connection recently myself." "Convenient," Blackwell sneered. Luke's mind raced. He needed time to understand the full scope of what was happening. "Sheriff, I request 24 hours to review these allegations and consult with Mrs. Whitmore's attorneys in Denver." Garrett considered this. That's reasonable, but I'll post deputies at the gates. No one leaves Thunder Ridge until this matter is resolved." After the sheriff and Blackwell departed, Eleanor dismissed everyone except Luke. Once alone, she moved to a concealed safe behind a painting, extracting several leather-bound volumes. "These are the complete records of Thunder Ridge," she said, placing them on the desk. "Everything I've done, every decision I've made, is documented here. Read them, Luke, then decide whether I'm the monster they claim." "Why keep such detailed records of potentially incriminating activities?" Luke asked. Eleanor smiled sadly. "Because history is written by the victors, and I intended to be victorious. These journals ensure my version of events survives." Over. The next several hours, Luke immersed himself in Eleanor's private records. The picture that emerged was complex, neither the simple tale of villainy Blackwell painted, nor the complete innocence Eleanor claimed. Jacob Peterson had indeed challenged Thunder Ridge's water rights, but the journals revealed he'd also attempted to blackmail Eleanor with fabricated evidence of Charles Whitmore's supposed criminal activities. His death, while suspicious, occurred during a genuine hunting trip with witnesses Eleanor couldn't have influenced. Rebecca Morrison's fate was murkier. Eleanor admitted in her writings to confronting the pregnant mistress, offering her money to leave Colorado. The woman had accepted, but her subsequent disappearance remained unexplained. The unmarked grave contained someone, but Eleanor's journals didn't confirm the identity. Most troubling were entries about the missing ranch hands. Eleanor wrote of discovering they'd been stealing cattle and selling them to rustlers. She'd had them dealt with by Benjamin Holbrook, though the exact meaning remained ambiguous. As dawn approached, Luke found Eleanor in the garden, watching the sunrise. She looked impossibly frail in the morning light. "Have you reached a verdict?" she asked without turning. "You're not innocent," Luke replied, "but you're not the monster they claim either. You're a woman who fought to survive in a brutal world." Eleanor nodded slowly. "When I arrived here, I was a grieving widow, surrounded by men who saw me as prey. I could have remarried for protection, surrendered Thunder Ridge to someone like Blackwell. Instead, I chose to fight." "At what cost?" "Every victory has a price, Luke. The question is whether the prize was worth it." Before Luke could respond, the sound of approaching horses interrupted them. Martha Blackwood rushed into the garden, her usually composed demeanor shattered. "Mrs. Whitmore, the barn's on fire!" They raced to the scene to find the main barn engulfed in flames. Ranch hands battled the blaze, but it was clearly beyond saving. In the chaos, Luke noticed something odd. The fire seemed to have started in multiple places simultaneously. "This is arson," he said to Eleanor. Her face was grim. "Blackwell's growing desperate. He knows those documents could exonerate me." Suddenly Benjamin Holbrook appeared, soot-stained and urgent. "Mrs. Whitmore, we have a bigger problem. During the confusion, someone breached your private safe. The journals are gone." Eleanor staggered, and Luke caught her before she fell. "Without those records," she whispered, "I have no defense against their accusations." The next 24 hours were a whirlwind of activity. Sheriff Garrett returned with additional warrants, while Blackwell's allies in the territorial government began proceedings to freeze Thunder Ridge's assets. Eleanor's health deteriorated rapidly under the strain. In desperation, Luke rode to the abandoned foreman's cabin, hoping Samuel Hawthorne might help locate the stolen journals. He found the old man packing to leave. "You've chosen your side, then," Samuel said, seeing Luke's determined expression. "I've chosen the truth," Luke corrected. "Eleanor's not perfect, but she's not what Blackwell claims. Help me find those journals." Samuel studied him for a long moment. "There's something you should know. The night Rebecca Morrison disappeared, I was there. Eleanor didn't harm her. The woman left willingly, paid handsomely to start a new life. In California, the grave contains her stillborn child. Eleanor insisted on a proper burial. Luke looked across the vast expanse of Eleanor's empire, his empire now. Honor her legacy while creating something new. Thunder Ridge will remain whole, but it will also evolve. We'll lead in sustainable ranching, support education, and prove that profit and principle can coexist. 6 months later, Luke stood in Eleanor's study, his study now, reviewing plans for the Thunder Ridge Agricultural Institute. The trust fund Eleanor had established would provide scholarships for young ranchers to learn innovative techniques that balanced productivity with conservation. Benjamin Holbrook entered with the morning report. The older man had become Luke's most trusted advisor, helping navigate the complex transition of power. "The new irrigation system is complete," Benjamin reported, "and the Denver papers want an interview about the institute." Luke nodded, his attention drawn to a portrait of Eleanor that now hung above the fireplace. The artist had captured her, strength and intelligence, but also a hint of the vulnerability she had revealed in her final days. He thought often of those 11 days that had changed his life completely. What had begun as a desperate bargain had evolved into something profound, a connection that transcended their unusual circumstances and revealed the complexity of human nature. Thunder Ridge prospered under Luke's leadership. He married 3 years later, for love this time, to a schoolteacher who shared his vision for education and progress. Together, they expanded Eleanor's legacy, making Thunder Ridge a model for responsible ranching and community development. The mysteries surrounding Eleanor Whitmore never fully disappeared. Occasionally, old stories would surface, questions about those early years when she fought to establish herself in a hostile world. But Luke had learned that truth was rarely simple, that heroes and villains existed more in stories than in real life. In the end, Eleanor Whitmore's greatest legacy wasn't Thunder Ridge itself, but the lesson she had taught Luke, that strength comes in many forms, that survival sometimes requires difficult choices, and that even the hardest hearts can harbor unexpected depths of compassion. As Luke watched the sun set over the ranch that had become his life's work, he raised a silent toast to the remarkable woman who had seen potential in a desperate cowboy and given him not just wealth, but purpose. Thunder Ridge endured, a testament to the indomitable spirit of Eleanor Whitmore and the unexpected paths that lead us to our destiny. 3 years had passed since Eleanor's death, and Thunder Ridge flourished under Luke's stewardship. The ranch had become renowned not just for its cattle, but for the Agricultural Institute that drew students from across the country. Luke had married Catherine Bennett, the schoolteacher from Denver who shared his vision for education and progress. Their twin daughters, Sarah and Eleanor, now toddled through the same halls where Luke had once felt like an intruder. On a stormy spring evening, as rain lashed against the windows, Luke sat in his study reviewing expansion plans for the institute. Catherine had retired early with the twins, and the house was quiet, except for the crackling fire and distant thunder. A loud crash from the library startled him. Racing down the hallway, Luke found a section of bookshelf had collapsed, scattering volumes across the floor. As he began gathering the books, he noticed something unusual. A metal box had been concealed behind the fallen shelf, now exposed by the accident. The box was locked, but Luke recognized the ornate keyhole design. Eleanor had worn a matching key on a chain around her neck, which now resided in his private safe. Retrieving the key, he opened the box with trembling hands. Inside lay a leather-bound journal, different from the others he'd found, older, more worn. The first page bore Eleanor's signature and a date, June 15th, 1865. Luke realized with shock that this predated her marriage to Charles Whitmore by 3 years. As he read, a completely different Eleanor emerged from the pages. The young woman who wrote these entries wasn't the stern matriarch he'd known, but a passionate, idealistic girl documenting a secret that reframed everything Luke thought he knew about Thunder Ridge's history. The journal revealed that Eleanor hadn't come west as Charles Whitmore's bride, but as a Union spy during the final days of the Civil War. Her mission to track Confederate gold that had been smuggled to Colorado Territory. The trail had led her to the property that would become Thunder Ridge, where she discovered something far more valuable than stolen gold, evidence of a massive silver deposit. Charles Whitmore hadn't been her first husband, but her second. Her first marriage, to a Union officer named James Calloway, had ended when he was killed trying to secure the silver claim. Eleanor had married Charles partly for protection, partly to maintain her cover as a grieving widow seeking a fresh start. Luke read through the night, each page revealing new layers to Eleanor's story. The silver mine that everyone assumed she'd acquired through clever investment had actually been her discovery. She'd used the Confederate gold, which she'd eventually found, to develop the mine in secret, funneling the profits into building Thunder Ridge. But the most shocking revelation came near the journal's end. Eleanor wrote of a daughter, born from her marriage to James Calloway, given up for adoption to protect her from those who still hunted the Confederate gold. The child's name, Sarah, Luke's mother. Eleanor hadn't been his aunt. She'd been his grandmother. Dawn found Luke still, in the library, surrounded by scattered pages, trying to process the implications. Eleanor had known who he was from the beginning. Her elaborate charade of marriage hadn't been about finding an heir. It had been about bringing her grandson home without revealing secrets that could still destroy everything she'd built. Catherine found him there, concern etched on her face. "Luke, what's happened?" He shared everything, watching his wife's expression shift from disbelief to understanding. "She protected you," Catherine said finally. "Even in death she was protecting you." But from what? Luke wondered aloud. His answer came that afternoon in the form of unexpected visitors. 3 men in expensive suits arrived, presenting cards, identifying them as representatives of the Confederate Heritage Foundation. Mr. Carson, the leader, a man named Beauregard Whitfield, began. "We understand you've recently discovered some historical documents." Luke tensed. "How could you possibly know that?" Whitfield smiled coldly. "We've been watching Thunder Ridge for generations, waiting for certain items to surface. Eleanor Whitmore was remarkably good at keeping secrets, but nothing stays hidden forever. The men claimed legal right to any Confederate gold found on Thunder Ridge property, producing documents that allegedly proved their case. They demanded access to Eleanor's private papers and threatened legal action if Luke refused. "Gentlemen," Luke said carefully, "I think you should leave." After their departure, Luke immediately contacted Judge Blackburn. The judge arrived the hour. Next day, bringing troubling news. "The Confederate Heritage Foundation has deep pockets and political connections," he warned. "They've been searching for that gold for decades. If they believe you've found it—" "But I haven't," Luke protested. "Eleanor's journal suggests she used it all to develop the silver mine." "Can you prove that?" the judge asked. "Without documentation. They could tie Thunder Ridge up in legal battles for years." Luke spent the following weeks preparing for the inevitable confrontation. He hired investigators to research the foundation, secured additional legal counsel, and most importantly, searched for the evidence Eleanor must have hidden. Proof that the Confederate gold had been legitimately transformed into Thunder Ridge's foundation. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Martha Blackwood, now elderly but still sharp, approached Luke one evening. "There's something you should see," she said, leading him to the old foreman's cabin, the same place where Samuel Hawthorne had first revealed Eleanor's secrets. In the root cellar, concealed behind a false wall, They found Eleanor's insurance policy, detailed records of how she'd discovered the silver, used the Confederate gold to develop it, and laundered the proceeds through legitimate business ventures. Every transaction was documented, every legal transfer recorded, but there was more. Eleanor had anticipated this day might come. She'd prepared a final testament, witnessed by Judge Blackburn himself, revealing her true identity as a Union operative and establishing Luke's rightful claim to Thunder Ridge through maternal lineage. Armed with this evidence, Luke confronted the Foundation's representatives when they returned with a court order. The ensuing legal battle played out in Denver's federal courthouse, drawing national attention as it exposed a web of Confederate sympathizers still operating decades after the war's end. Eleanor's meticulous records proved decisive. The judge ruled that any claim to Confederate gold was nullified by its legitimate transformation into mining operations that had benefited the entire territory. Moreover, Eleanor's service to the Union gave her legal right to the resources she'd recovered. The Foundation's lawsuit collapsed, but the revelations about Eleanor's true history captivated the public imagination. Newspapers across the country carried the story of the female spy who'd built a ranching empire on Confederate gold and Union courage. "Why didn't you say this before?" "Because Eleanor had me swear never to reveal it. She said some truths were too painful to bear." Samuel sighed. "As for the journals, I suspect Blackwell's son, William. He's been courting Martha Blackwood's niece Annie. The girl has access to the house." Armed with this information, Luke confronted Annie, who broke down and confessed. William Blackwell had manipulated her into stealing the journals, promising marriage and a life away from servitude. Luke recovered the journals from William's hotel room in town, but not before copies had been made. The younger Blackwell sneered. As Luke took the books, "It doesn't matter. We've already sent the most damaging excerpts to newspapers in Denver and Chicago. Eleanor Whitmore's empire will crumble." Racing back to Thunder Ridge, Luke found Eleanor in her bedroom, attended by Dr. Phillips. Her breathing was labored, her skin ashen. "The journals?" she whispered. "Recovered, but Blackwell has copies. The story will break in tomorrow's papers." Eleanor closed her eyes. "Then it's over." "No," Luke said firmly. "We'll fight this. I'll testify to the full truth, including what Samuel told me about Rebecca. We'll provide context for every accusation." "Why?" Eleanor asked. "Why fight for me now that you know everything?" Luke took her hand. "Because you're family, because Thunder Ridge represents something worth preserving, and because sometimes the truth is more complex than heroes and villains." Eleanor's grip tightened slightly. "You truly are Sarah's son. She always saw the good in people even when they didn't deserve it." As night fell, Luke sat beside Eleanor's bed, planning their legal strategy. The coming days would bring newspaper scandals, legal battles, and public scrutiny. But for the first time since arriving at Thunder Ridge, Luke felt certain of his purpose. The empire Eleanor had built might be imperfect, forged through questionable means and maintained through iron will. But it had also provided livelihoods for hundreds, advanced agricultural techniques that benefited the entire region, and stood as testament to what a determined woman could achieve in a man's world. Whether Thunder Ridge survived the coming storm remained uncertain, but Luke Carson, or Whitmore, as he now thought of himself, would fight to preserve not just the ranch, but the complex legacy of the remarkable woman who had built it. The morning newspapers arrived with headlines that screamed scandal, Cattle Queen's dark secrets exposed, and Thunder Ridge built on blood. Luke spread them across Eleanor's desk. His jaw clenched as he read the lurid accounts that twisted fragments of truth into sensational fiction. Eleanor, despite her weakened state, insisted on being brought to her study. Wrapped in a heavy shawl, She sat in her chair with dignified defiance as Luke read the articles aloud. "They've painted me as Lady Macbeth of the Plains," she observed with bitter amusement. "How theatrical!" A knock at the door interrupted them. Benjamin Holbrook entered, followed by an unexpected visitor, Judge Theodore Blackburn from Denver, a distinguished man with silver hair and penetrating eyes. "Theodore," Eleanor greeted him with surprise. "I didn't expect you to make the journey." "When I heard what was happening, I came immediately," the judge replied. "We've known each other too long for me to believe these accusations without hearing your side." Luke watched this exchange with interest. Here was an ally they hadn't counted on. "Your Honor," Luke began, "we have evidence that contradicts many of these claims." Judge Blackburn raised his hand. "First, let me speak with Eleanor alone. Then we'll discuss legal strategy." After Luke and Benjamin left, Eleanor faced her old friend. "You're risking your reputation by coming here, Theodore." "Some things matter more than reputation," he replied, "like truth and justice. Now, tell me everything." An hour later, Judge Blackburn emerged looking grave but determined. He gathered Luke, Benjamin, and Martha Blackwood in the library. "We have a fight ahead of us," he announced, "but Eleanor's position isn't as precarious as Blackwell hopes. I've reviewed the warrants. They're based largely on hearsay and circumstantial evidence. What we need is a counter-narrative backed by facts." Over the next week, Thunder Ridge transformed into a legal war room. Judge Blackburn brought in 2 sharp attorneys from Denver, while Luke worked tirelessly to organize evidence. In Eleanor's defense, they tracked down former employees who told different stories from those in Blackwell's affidavits, found financial records proving Samuel Hawthorne's embezzlement, and located Rebecca Morrison, alive and well in San Francisco. The turning point came when Annie, Martha's niece, agreed to testify about William Blackwell's manipulation. Her testimony revealed a broader conspiracy. Harrison Blackwell had been systematically gathering disgruntled former employees, offering them money for testimony that would support his narrative. Meanwhile, Eleanor's health continued to decline. Dr. Phillips warned that the stress was accelerating her heart condition. One evening, as Luke sat beside her bed reviewing legal documents, she spoke with unusual candor. "I won't survive to see the end of this battle," she said matter-of-factly. "Don't say that," Luke protested. "We must face reality, which is why I need to tell you something about your inheritance." Eleanor revealed a provision in her will that Luke hadn't known about. Beyond Thunder Ridge and its assets, she had established a trust fund for agricultural education, designed to help young ranchers learn sustainable practices. "Your mother wanted to be a teacher," Eleanor explained. "This is my way of honoring her memory. You'll oversee the trust, ensure it fulfills its purpose." The preliminary hearing arrived on a crisp September morning. The courthouse in Denver overflowed with spectators, journalists, and curious onlookers. Eleanor, against Dr. Phillips's advice, insisted on attending. Harrison Blackwell presented his case with theatrical flair, calling witness after witness, who painted Eleanor as a ruthless operator who eliminated rivals through any means necessary. But under cross-examination by Eleanor's attorneys, many stories fell apart. Dates didn't match. Details contradicted known facts, and several witnesses admitted to receiving payment from Blackwell. The most dramatic moment came when Rebecca Morrison herself took the stand. Now, a respectable widow running a boarding house in San Francisco, she testified that Eleanor had helped her escape an impossible situation. "Mrs. Whitmore gave me the means to start a new life," Rebecca stated. "She could have destroyed me, but instead showed compassion I didn't deserve." When asked about the unmarked grave, Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. "My child was stillborn. Eleanor insisted on a proper burial, even though I was just her husband's mistress. She said every soul deserved dignity." The tide began to turn. Samuel Hawthorne, when confronted with evidence of his embezzlement, recanted much of his testimony. The missing ranch hands were traced to Mexico, where they'd fled after stealing cattle, very much alive and unwilling to return to face charges. As the hearing progressed, a different picture of Eleanor emerged. Yes, she had been tough, sometimes ruthless in business dealings, but she had also paid fair wages, supported local schools, and pioneered conservation practices that protected the land for future generations. On the 5th day of testimony, Eleanor collapsed. Luke caught her as she fell, and she was rushed to Denver's finest hospital. The judge called a recess, but Eleanor insisted Luke return to court. "Finish this," she whispered. "Don't let them win by default." That afternoon, Luke took the stand. He spoke not as Eleanor's husband or heir, but as someone who had come to understand the complex woman behind the legend. He described her dedication to preserving Thunder Ridge, not for personal glory, but as a testament to what could be achieved through determination and vision. "Eleanor Whitmore isn't perfect," Luke concluded. "She made difficult choices in difficult times, but she built something lasting, something that benefits this entire region. That's her true legacy." The judge's ruling came the next day. While acknowledging that some of Eleanor's business practices had been aggressive, he found no evidence of criminal wrongdoing. The warrants were quashed, and Blackwell was censured for attempting to manipulate the legal system. Luke rushed to the hospital with the news, but Eleanor had slipped into unconsciousness. He sat beside her bed, holding her hand as Dr. Phillips monitored her failing heart. In her final moments, Eleanor's eyes opened. She looked at Luke with clarity and, perhaps, for the first time, genuine affection. "Take care of Thunder Ridge," she whispered. "Make it better than I did. Be the bridge between old ways and new." Eleanor Whitmore died that evening, 11 days after her marriage to Luke Carson. Her funeral drew hundreds, ranch hands, business, associates, rivals who came to pay reluctant respect, and ordinary people whose lives she had touched. Harrison Blackwell attended, his ambitions defeated. In a surprising gesture, he approached Luke at the graveside. "She was a formidable opponent," Blackwell said quietly. "I may not have liked her methods, but I respected her strength. Thunder Ridge is yours now. What will you do with it?" The attack was calculated to undermine both Thunder Ridge's reputation and the government partnership. Luke realized he faced the same battle Eleanor had fought: preservation versus exploitation, long-term stewardship versus short-term profit. His response came not through lawyers or politicians, but through action. Luke invited his critics to Thunder Ridge, challenging them to compare the health of his land with their industrial operations. The contrast was undeniable. Where their land showed erosion and depletion, Thunder Ridge flourished. But Cornelius Blackwell had one more card to play. He discovered fragments of Eleanor's Confederate gold history and threatened to reveal selective portions that would paint her as a Southern sympathizer who'd stolen from the Confederacy for personal gain. "The truth is rarely simple, Mr. Blackwell," Luke responded when confronted. "But if you insist on excavating the past, let's reveal all of it." In a bold move that Eleanor would have appreciated, Luke called a press conference. He revealed Eleanor's complete history: Union spy, Confederate gold, the sacrifice of her family name, everything. He presented her journals, government commendations, and testimony from surviving members of Pinkerton's agency. The story that emerged wasn't one of theft, but of patriotism and sacrifice. Eleanor hadn't stolen from the Confederacy. She'd prevented. Resources from funding continued rebellion. Her personal losses, family reputation, her firstborn daughter added profound humanity to her legend. Public opinion shifted dramatically. Eleanor Whitmore became a national heroine, her story inspiring books, plays, and eventually a Hollywood film. Thunder Ridge's reputation not only survived but soared to new heights. The industrialists retreated, their campaign discredited. The Government partnership flourished, leading to agricultural advances that would feed millions. And Luke finally understood the full measure of Eleanor's gift to him, not just wealth or land, but the courage to face truth in all its complexity. Years later, as Luke watched his daughters graduate from the university, Eleanor's fortune had helped establish. He reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought him here, from desperate cowboy to national figure, from Eleanor's pawn to her proud heir. He'd traveled a path she'd laid out with remarkable foresight. Sarah and Eleanor. Carson would inherit not just Thunder Ridge, but its legacy of courage, innovation, and integrity. They knew their great-grandmother's complete story now, not as a tale of deception, but as an epic of sacrifice and vision. In the ranch's private cemetery, Luke had added a new monument beside Eleanor's grave. It bore words from her final letter. Sometimes the hardest choices yield the greatest good. Below this, he'd added his own inscription, Eleanor Whitmore Calloway, patriot, pioneer, grandmother. Her legacy lives in the land she loved and the family she protected. As sunset painted the Colorado sky in shades of gold and crimson, Luke stood before the monument with his family. Thunder Ridge stretched before them, its fields and pastures, a testament to one woman's indomitable will and one man's faithful stewardship. The circle was complete. What had begun with a desperate bargain had become a dynasty built on truth, courage, and the understanding that our greatest inheritance isn't wealth or land, but the wisdom to use both for the greater good. 25 years after Eleanor's death, Thunder Ridge stood as a beacon of American achievement. Luke, now in his 50s with silver threading his dark hair, had transformed the ranch into something beyond even Eleanor's grand vision. The Agricultural Institute had graduated thousands of students, and Thunder Ridge's conservation methods were studied worldwide. On a brilliant spring morning in 1922, Luke's daughter Sarah, now a respected botanist, burst into his study with excitement radiating from her face. "Father, you need to see what we've found in the East Meadow excavation." The archaeological dig had been Eleanor's idea, her younger twin sister pursuing her passion for history by documenting Thunder Ridge's Native American heritage. What they'd uncovered, however, belonged to a much more recent past. In a sealed copper box buried beneath what had once been Eleanor's private garden, they discovered a collection of letters, photographs, and documents that even Luke had never seen. As he carefully examined each item, the final pieces of Eleanor's puzzle fell into place. The photographs showed a young Eleanor with a man Luke had never seen, tall, distinguished, wearing a Union officer's uniform. On the back, in Eleanor's precise script, James Calloway, my beloved, 1864, but it was the letters that revealed the most staggering truth. James Calloway hadn't died in the war, as Eleanor's journal suggested. He'd survived, gravely wounded, and been hidden away by Eleanor to protect him from Confederate agents, who'd discovered his true identity as head of Union intelligence in the West. For 5 years after the war, James had lived in secret at Thunder Ridge while Eleanor built her empire and waited for the danger to pass. They'd had not one child, but two, Sarah, Luke's mother, and a son named William, born 3 years later. The letters detailed an agonizing decision. Confederate sympathizers, refusing to accept defeat, had formed a shadow organization dedicated to vengeance. They'd learned of James's survival and were systematically hunting down former Union spies and their families. To protect their children, Eleanor and James had staged his death, scattered their family, and erased all connections between them. Sarah had been sent to distant relatives in Philadelphia, while William was placed with a trusted family in California. James himself had assumed a new identity, becoming a railroad surveyor in Canada. The most heartbreaking letter was dated 1875. My dearest Eleanor, 10 years we've maintained this charade, and still the shadows lengthen rather than fade. I watch from afar as you build an empire our children will inherit, though they may never know their father's face. You've borne this burden with a strength that humbles me. Protect our legacy, my love. Let Thunder Ridge stand as monument to what we sacrificed for duty and country. Forever yours, James. The final document in the box was a sealed envelope addressed to Luke, dated just months before Eleanor's death. My dear grandson, if you've found this, then my contingency plan has worked, and you're ready for the complete truth. Your grandfather James lived until 1910, watching over us all from a distance. He's buried in Montreal under the name Thomas Whitefield, but his heart always remained at Thunder Ridge. Your uncle William became a federal judge in San Francisco. He knew of you, as you now know of him. His children, your cousins, carry on our family's tradition of service. I orchestrated our marriage, not just to secure Thunder Ridge, but to heal our fractured family. In you, the bloodlines reunite. The sacrifices of 2 generations find their purpose. Forgive an old woman her elaborate schemes. Everything I did was to protect those I loved and preserve what we built from the ashes of war. My last request, find your uncle's family. Bring them to Thunder Ridge. Let our family be whole again, with eternal love, Eleanor. Luke sat in stunned silence as the magnitude of Eleanor's final revelation washed over him. His daughter Sarah gently touched his shoulder. There's more, Father. We found a telegram from San Francisco dated last week. The telegram was from Margaret Whitefield Harrison, William's daughter. Records discovered, family connection confirmed, arriving Denver Thursday, hoping to meet cousins at last. Thursday was tomorrow. The reunion at Thunder Ridge was unlike anything the ranch had ever witnessed. Margaret arrived with her brother Thomas and their families, educated, successful people who'd known nothing of their true heritage until discovering their father's papers after his death. As Luke welcomed them to Thunder Ridge, he saw Eleanor's features reflected in their faces, heard echoes of her determination in their voices. The great house filled with laughter and tears as 2 branches of a family, separated by war and necessity, finally grew together again. That evening, they gathered in Eleanor's study, now Luke's, where he shared the complete story of their remarkable ancestor. The cousins listened in awe as Luke revealed how Eleanor had played a dangerous game of chess, spanning decades, protecting her family while building an empire that would secure their future. She trusted that time would heal the wounds that forced us apart, Luke concluded, and that Thunder Ridge would eventually bring us back together. Margaret's son, a young lawyer named James, after his unknown great-grandfather, spoke up. It's like she orchestrated this reunion from beyond the grave. That was Eleanor, Luke smiled, always planning 3 moves ahead. The family spent a week at Thunder Ridge, exploring their heritage and discussing the future. They decided to establish the Callaway Whitmore Foundation, uniting their resources to expand Eleanor's vision of education and conservation across America. On their final evening together, they held a ceremony at Eleanor's grave. Luke had commissioned a new monument, a bronze sculpture depicting Eleanor as both the young spy and the elder matriarch, symbolizing the 2 lives she'd led. As the sun set behind the mountains, Luke addressed the assembled family. Eleanor. Whitmore Callaway lived many lives, spy, wife, mother, pioneer, and empire builder. But her greatest role was as architect of our family's destiny. She sacrificed personal happiness for duty, scattered her children to save them, and spent decades preparing for this moment when we could safely reunite. She chose me, a desperate cowboy, not just as her heir, but as the bridge between past and future. Through schemes that seemed manipulative, she was actually healing wounds that war had inflicted on our nation and our family. Today, we honor not just her memory, but her vision, Thunder Ridge stands as testament to the power of sacrifice, the strength of family, and the truth that sometimes the longest path leads us home. As the family placed flowers on Eleanor's grave, a profound sense of completion settled over Thunder Ridge. The secrets were all revealed, the scattered family reunited, the legacy secured for generations to come. In the years that followed, Thunder Ridge became more than a ranch or an institute. It evolved into a symbol of American resilience and reconciliation. The Calloway-Whitmore descendants, spread across the country, maintained their connection through annual gatherings at the ranch, each bringing their unique talents to preserve and expand Eleanor's vision. Luke lived to see his grandchildren take their places in this extended family, watching with pride as they carried forward the values Eleanor had instilled. When he finally joined her in the Thunder Ridge Cemetery at the age of 87, he was laid to rest beside the remarkable woman who had changed his life with a desperate bargain that became a profound legacy. The inscription on his monument read, "Luke Carson Whitmore, faithful steward, bridge between generations, keeper of the legacy." Thunder Ridge endures to this day, its story told in history books and family gatherings, a testament to one woman's extraordinary vision and the cowboy who helped fulfill it. Visitors to the ranch can tour the Eleanor Whitmore Museum, where her complete story is told, not as a tale of deception, but as an epic of love, sacrifice, and the indomitable spirit that built the American West. In the end, Eleanor's greatest achievement wasn't the empire she built or the wealth she accumulated, but the family she preserved through decades of careful planning. Her 11-day marriage to Luke Carson had indeed shocked him, not with scandal or betrayal, but with the profound revelation of a love that transcended generations, a loyalty that defied convention, and a legacy that would inspire Americans for generations to come. The poor cowboy who married a 75-year-old ranch heiress discovered not just wealth or property, but his own identity, his true family, and his place in a story far grander than he could have imagined. In those 11 days, Eleanor Whitmore gave him everything, past, present, and future, wrapped in the elaborate disguise of a business arrangement that was, in truth, the culmination of a lifetime's devotion to family and country. The year was 1947, and America was emerging from the shadow of World War II. Thunder Ridge had played its part in the victory, supplying beef to feed troops and hosting agricultural research that helped maximize crop yields during wartime rationing. Sarah and Eleanor Carson, now in their 50s, had taken over primary management of the ranch, while their father, Luke, at 78, served as elder statesman and keeper of family history. On a cool October morning, a letter arrived that would bring Eleanor Whitmore's story full circle in ways no one could have anticipated. The return address bore the seal of the newly formed Central Intelligence Agency. "Dear Mr. Whitmore," the letter began, "in reviewing historical records of Civil War intelligence operations, we've discovered documentation relating to your grandmother, Eleanor Whitmore Calloway. Her contributions to Union intelligence were far more significant than previously known. We request your presence in Washington to discuss declassifying her complete service record and possibly awarding posthumous recognition." Luke's hands trembled slightly as he read. Even after all these years, Eleanor continued to surprise him. 2 weeks later, Luke sat in a secure room at CIA headquarters, accompanied by his daughters and several Calloway-Whitmore cousins. Director Roscoe Hillenkoetter himself conducted the briefing. Eleanor Whitmore wasn't just a spy, Hillenkoetter explained, spreading aged documents across the conference table. She was one of Alan Pinkerton's most valuable assets. Her intelligence network extended from Boston to San Francisco, and her reports directly influenced Union strategy in the Western Territories. The documents revealed operations Luke had never imagined. Eleanor had coordinated a network of female operatives who gathered intelligence from Confederate sympathizers across the frontier. She'd intercepted plans for raids on Union gold shipments, identified saboteurs within the railroad companies, and even prevented an assassination attempt on General Sherman during his Western tour. But her most significant achievement, Hillenkoetter continued, was Operation Thornbird. The room fell silent as he detailed Eleanor's masterwork. In 1864, Confederate agents had developed a plan to establish a Western Confederacy, using stolen gold to fund an uprising that would split California and Oregon from the Union. Eleanor had not only discovered this plot, but had orchestrated its complete collapse by feeding false information to Confederate handlers while systematically dismantling their network. The Confederate gold she recovered wasn't just valuable for its monetary worth, Hillenkoetter explained. It was the key to preventing a second front in the Civil War. Your grandmother may have saved the Union. Luke's daughter, Sarah, spoke up. Why was none of this known before? The operation was so sensitive that even President Lincoln knew only parts of it. After the war, records were sealed to protect operatives and their families from retaliation. Eleanor herself insisted on maintaining secrecy to protect her children. The CIA director produced a final document, a commendation signed by Lincoln himself, dated April 13, 1865, just one day before his assassination. For extraordinary service to the United States, displaying courage, intelligence, and dedication beyond measure, Eleanor Sarah Whitmore is hereby recognized as a true patriot whose actions preserved the Union in its darkest hour. May history remember her sacrifice. The document had never been delivered. In the chaos following Lincoln's death, it had been filed away and forgotten until the CIA's historical review uncovered it. We'd like to hold a public ceremony, Hillenkoetter said, to finally give Eleanor Whitmore the recognition she deserves. 6 months later, Thunder Ridge hosted the largest gathering in its history. Government officials, military brass, historians, and journalists converged on the ranch where Eleanor had built her empire from the ashes of her secret war. The president himself attended, presenting the Medal of Freedom posthumously to Eleanor Whitmore Calloway, but the ceremony held a surprise that not even Luke had anticipated. As the president concluded his remarks, an elderly man in a wheelchair was brought forward. At 93, he was perhaps the last living person who had known Eleanor during her spy years. "My name is Robert Pinkerton," he announced in a surprisingly strong voice, "son of Alan Pinkerton and Eleanor's handler during the war. I've carried a secret for more than 80 years, waiting for the right moment to reveal it." The crowd hushed as he continued. Eleanor Whitmore's greatest deception wasn't the Confederate gold or her assumed identities. It was the fiction that her husband, James Calloway, died of his wounds. Gasps rippled through the audience. Luke leaned forward, his heart racing. "James Calloway lived until 1923, Pinkerton revealed. He and Eleanor maintained their separation to protect their children, yes, but also because James continued intelligence work for the government long after the war ended. He was instrumental in breaking up Confederate resurgence movements, tracking war criminals to South America, and establishing what would become America's Foreign Intelligence Service." Pinkerton produced a photograph, James Calloway, much older but unmistakable, standing beside Eleanor at Thunder Ridge. The date on the back, 1898. "They met secretly once a year," Pinkerton explained. "Always here, always in spring. Eleanor would send the staff away for a week, claiming she needed solitude. James would arrive disguised as a cattle buyer from Chicago. For 30 years they maintained this arrangement, sacrificing their life, together for the safety of their family and country." Luke's mind reeled. The annual retreats Eleanor had taken, he remembered them from ranch records. the mysterious cattle buyer mentioned in old ledgers. The pieces fell into place with crystalline clarity. James's final resting place isn't in Montreal, Pinkerton concluded. With Eleanor's help, I arranged for his body to be returned here. He's buried in an unmarked grave in the Cottonwood Grove, the place where they first met on Colorado soil. After the ceremony, Luke led his family to the Cottonwood Grove. They found the spot Pinkerton had described, a peaceful clearing where wildflowers grew in unusual abundance. Luke had walked past it countless times, never knowing its significance. That evening, as the last guest departed, Luke gathered his extended family in Eleanor's study. The room was crowded with 3 generations of Calloway Whitmores, including James's descendants from California and Sarah's children from Philadelphia. Everything we thought we knew about Eleanor was just the surface, Luke began. She and James sacrificed not just years, but decades together. They scattered their family not once, but maintained that separation for a lifetime, all to protect us and serve their country. Margaret's grandson, now a young historian, spoke up. It's like they lived an entire secret life parallel to the one everyone saw. Not parallel, Luke corrected gently, intertwined. Every decision Eleanor made, building Thunder Ridge, choosing me as her heir, even the timing of our marriage, was part of a larger design. She was reuniting her family in the only way she could, ensuring we'd be strong enough to bear the truth when it finally emerged. Sarah added, "The 11-day marriage that shocked you, Father, it was her final move in a chess game spanning 60 years. As the family talked late into the night, sharing stories and piecing together the full tapestry of Eleanor and James's lives, Luke realized that Thunder Ridge itself was their greatest love letter. Every acre represented a year they couldn't spend together, every innovation a dream they'd shared in their brief annual reunions. The next morning, Luke oversaw the installation of a new memorial in the Cottonwood Grove. The stone bore 2 names, James and Eleanor Calloway, with the inscription, "Separated by duty, united by love, together at last in the land they preserved." In the years that followed, Thunder Ridge became more than an agricultural institute or family estate. It evolved into a museum of American intelligence history, a training ground for future diplomats and spies, and a symbol of sacrifice in service of a greater good. Luke lived to see the dawn of the 1950s, watching his grandchildren take their places in a world shaped by the choices of their remarkable ancestors. When he passed at 91, his funeral drew dignitaries from around the globe. He was buried beside the wife he'd loved for 40 years, Catherine, the schoolteacher who'd helped him understand Eleanor's complex legacy. But in death, as in life, Luke's strongest connection remained. With Eleanor, their 11-day marriage had indeed shocked him, not with scandal, but with the profound realization that love takes many forms. Eleanor had looked at a desperate cowboy and seen not just an heir, but the key to healing a family fractured by war and duty. Today, Thunder Ridge stands as one of America's most significant historical sites. Visitors walk the grounds where Eleanor built an empire from Confederate gold, where James watched from shadows as his children grew, where Luke discovered that his desperate bargain was actually a carefully orchestrated homecoming. In the main house, Eleanor's study remains exactly as she left it, with one addition, a display case containing the newly discovered documents that revealed her true role in preserving the Union. School children learn about the female spy who changed history, while intelligence analysts study her methods. At the Calloway Institute for Strategic Studies, but for the Calloway Whitmore family, gathered each spring for their annual reunion, Thunder Ridge is simply home, a testament to the enduring power of love, loyalty, and the understanding that sometimes the greatest sacrifices yield the most profound rewards. The poor cowboy who married a 75-year-old ranch heiress discovered more than wealth or land. He discovered that he was part of an epic story of love and patriotism, a tale of sacrifice and redemption that spanned generations. In those 11 days, Eleanor Whitmore gave Luke Carson not just a future, but a past rich with meaning, and a legacy that would inspire generations. As the sun sets over Thunder Ridge, painting the sky in colors of gold and crimson, one can almost see Eleanor and James walking hand in hand through their beloved cottonwood grove, finally together in the land they saved, their greatest secret, now their proudest legacy. The circle is complete, the story told, and Thunder Ridge endures, a monument to the extraordinary lengths we'll go to protect those we love and the country we serve. 75 years after Luke Carson's passing, in the spring of 2025, Thunder Ridge celebrated its sesquicentennial, 150 years since Eleanor Whitmore first set foot on Colorado soil. The ranch had evolved beyond anything its founders could have imagined, yet remained true to their vision. Dr. Emily Whitmore Carson, great-great-granddaughter of Luke and professor of American history at Harvard, stood before a crowd of thousands gathered for the anniversary celebration. Behind her, holographic displays showed Eleanor and James as they had appeared in newly discovered photographs from the 1860s, their young faces full of determination and purpose. Today, we unveil the final chapter of Eleanor Whitmore's story, Emily announced, her voice carrying across the grounds through advanced audio systems. Recent archaeological discoveries and declassified government documents have revealed one last secret, the crowd murmured with anticipation. Even after all these years, Eleanor continued to surprise. In 1912, 3 years before her death, Eleanor established a time capsule with instructions that it be opened exactly 110 years later. Today, Emily gestured to a steel box that had been unearthed that morning from beneath the cornerstone of the Agricultural Institute. As the capsule was opened with reverent care, Emily read Eleanor's final message to the future. To my descendants and the guardians of Thunder Ridge, if you are reading this, then my greatest hope has been realized. Thunder Ridge endures, and with it, the values that James and I held dear. By now, you know our story, or most of it. But there remains one truth I've saved for this moment, when enough time has passed for it to be received with wonder rather than judgment. James and I didn't just preserve the Union and build Thunder Ridge. We created something that would outlast us both, a network of families across America, bound not by blood alone, but by shared purpose. The children we helped orphaned by war, the former slaves we assisted in finding new lives, the immigrants we sponsored, they all became part of an extended family dedicated to building a better nation. Look around you. The descendants of those we helped are likely among you, though they may not know it. The teacher who inspired you, the doctor who healed you, the leader who guided you. Somewhere in their lineage may be someone James and I aided in secret. We called it the Thunder Ridge Network, and its only mission was to pay forward the opportunities we created. Each family we helped was asked to help another when they were able. No records were kept, no debts tallied. Just a simple promise to extend a hand to others as one was extended to them. By my calculations, if each family helped just one other, over these 110 years, more than 1 million Americans have been touched by this quiet legacy. You'll never know them all, and that's as it should be. True charity seeks no recognition. My final request is this: continue the network. In your modern world of technology and connection, find ways to help others without expectation of return. Let Thunder Ridge be not just a place, but a principle that, from desperate circumstances, can come great purpose, and from individual acts of kindness can grow movements that change the world. To Luke, my chosen grandson, who I know will ensure this message reaches the future. You were never just an heir. You were the proof that our network worked. Your father, unknown to you, was helped by a family James and I aided during the war. The universe has a way of completing circles we begin. Remember always, wealth fades, land changes hands. But the good we do for others ripples through time in ways we cannot imagine. Thunder Ridge was never about the acres or the cattle or even the gold. It was about creating a fortress of hope in a troubled world, a place where dreams could take root and grow. Build your own fortresses of hope wherever you are. The world will always need them. With eternal love and faith in the future, Eleanor Whitmore Calloway. As Emily finished reading, a profound silence fell over the assembled crowd. Then, slowly, people began to stand. First a few, then dozens, then hundreds. They were the living proof of Eleanor's network, descendants of families helped by Thunder Ridge over the generations. Many learning for the first time how their ancestors' lives had been touched by Eleanor and James's quiet philanthropy. Among them stood Maria Rodriguez, whose great-grandmother had been smuggled out of Mexico during the Revolution with Thunder Ridge's help. Beside her was Dr. James Chen, whose ancestor had been sponsored by the ranch to attend medical school in 1920. Near the front, Sarah Williams listened with tears in her eyes. Her family had been sharecroppers, given a fresh start through Eleanor's secret fund. The celebration transformed into something unprecedented. People shared stories passed down through generations, whispered tales of mysterious benefactors, unexpected opportunities, and new beginnings that had always been attributed to luck or divine providence. Emily revealed that modern DNA analysis and genealogical research had confirmed what Eleanor suspected. The Thunder Ridge network had indeed touched over 1 million lives. The ranch's influence extended far beyond its acres, woven into the fabric of American society in ways no one had imagined. That evening, as the sun set over the Rockies, the family gathered in Eleanor's study for a private ceremony. Emily placed the time capsule letter in a special display case alongside Eleanor's other documents. But there was one more surprise. Hidden in the capsule's false bottom, they found a small locket containing 2 photographs, Eleanor and James on their wedding day, young and full of hope, and another taken decades later at one of their secret reunions, their faces lined with age, but their eyes still bright with love. Engraved inside the locket were the words, "Distance is to love, what wind is to fire. It extinguishes the small and kindles the great." Not parallel, Luke corrected gently, intertwined. Every decision Eleanor made, building Thunder Ridge, choosing me as her heir, even the timing of our marriage, was part of a larger design. She was reuniting her family in the only way she could, ensuring we'd be strong enough to bear the truth when it finally emerged. Sarah added, "The 11-day marriage that shocked you, Father, it was her final move in a chess game spanning 60 years. As the family talked late into the night, sharing stories and piecing together the full tapestry of Eleanor and James's lives, Luke realized that Thunder Ridge itself was their greatest love letter. Every acre represented a year they couldn't spend together, every innovation a dream they'd shared in their brief annual reunions. The next morning, Luke oversaw the installation of a new memorial in the Cottonwood Grove. The stone bore 2 names, James and Eleanor Calloway, with the inscription, "Separated by duty, united by love, together at last in the land they preserved." In the years that followed, Thunder Ridge became more than an agricultural institute or family estate. It evolved into a museum of American intelligence history, a training ground for future diplomats and spies, and a symbol of sacrifice in service of a greater good. Luke lived to see the dawn of the 1950s, watching his grandchildren take their places in a world shaped by the choices of their remarkable ancestors. When he passed at 91, his funeral drew dignitaries from around the globe. He was buried beside the wife he'd loved for 40 years, Catherine, the schoolteacher who'd helped him understand Eleanor's complex legacy. But in death, as in life, Luke's strongest connection remained. With Eleanor, their 11-day marriage had indeed shocked him, not with scandal, but with the profound realization that love takes many forms. Eleanor had looked at a desperate cowboy and seen not just an heir, but the key to healing a family fractured by war and duty. Today, Thunder Ridge stands as one of America's most significant historical sites. Visitors walk the grounds where Eleanor built an empire from Confederate gold, where James watched from shadows as his children grew, where Luke discovered that his desperate bargain was actually a carefully orchestrated homecoming. In the main house, Eleanor's study remains exactly as she left it, with one addition, a display case containing the newly discovered documents that revealed her true role in preserving the Union. School children learn about the female spy who changed history, while intelligence analysts study her methods. At the Callaway Institute for Strategic Studies, but for the Callaway-Whitmore family, gathered each spring for their annual reunion, Thunder Ridge is simply home, a testament to the enduring power of love, loyalty, and the understanding that sometimes the greatest sacrifices yield the most profound rewards. The poor cowboy who married a 75-year-old ranch heiress discovered more than wealth or land. He discovered that he was part of an epic story of love and patriotism, a tale of sacrifice and redemption that spanned generations. In those 11 days, Eleanor Whitmore gave Luke Carson not just a future, but a past rich with meaning, and a legacy that would inspire generations. As the sun sets over Thunder Ridge, painting the sky in colors of gold and crimson, one can almost see Eleanor and James walking hand in hand through their beloved cottonwood grove, finally together in the land they saved, their greatest secret, now their proudest legacy. The circle is complete, the story told, and Thunder Ridge endures, a monument to the extraordinary lengths we'll go to protect those we love and the country we serve. 75 years after Luke Carson's passing, in the spring of 2025, Thunder Ridge celebrated its sesquicentennial, 150 years since Eleanor Whitmore first set foot on Colorado soil. The ranch had evolved beyond anything its founders could have imagined, yet remained true to their vision. Dr. Emily Whitmore Carson, great-great-granddaughter of Luke and professor of American history at Harvard, stood before a crowd of thousands gathered for the anniversary celebration. Behind her, holographic displays showed Eleanor and James as they had appeared in newly discovered photographs from the 1860s, their young faces full of determination and purpose. Today, we unveil the final chapter of Eleanor Whitmore's story, Emily announced, her voice carrying across the grounds through advanced audio systems. Recent archaeological discoveries and declassified government documents have revealed one last secret, the crowd murmured with anticipation. Even after all these years, Eleanor continued to surprise. In 1912, 3 years before her death, Eleanor established a time capsule with instructions that it be opened exactly 110 years later. Today, Emily gestured to a steel box that had been unearthed that morning from beneath the cornerstone of the Agricultural Institute. As the capsule was opened with reverent care, Emily read Eleanor's final message to the future. To my descendants and the guardians of Thunder Ridge, if you are reading this, then my greatest hope has been realized. Thunder Ridge endures, and with it, the values that James and I held dear. By now, you know our story, or most of it. But there remains one truth I've saved for this moment, when enough time has passed for it to be received with wonder rather than judgment. James and I didn't just preserve the Union and build Thunder Ridge. We created something that would outlast Us both, a network of families across America, bound not by blood alone, but by shared purpose. The children we helped orphaned by war, the former slaves we assisted in finding new lives, the immigrants we sponsored, they all became part of an extended family dedicated to building a better nation. Look around you. The descendants of those we helped are likely among you, though they may not know it. The teacher who inspired you, the doctor who healed you, the leader who guided you. Somewhere in their lineage may be someone James and I aided in secret. We called it the Thunder Ridge Network, and its only mission was to pay forward the opportunities we created. Each family we helped was asked to help another when they were able. No records were kept, no debts tallied. Just a simple promise to extend a hand to others as one was extended to them. By my calculations, if each family helped just one other, over these 110 years, more than 1 million Americans have been touched by this quiet legacy. You'll never know them all, and that's as it should be. True charity seeks no recognition. My final request is this: continue the network. In your modern world of technology and connection, find ways to help others without expectation of return. Let Thunder Ridge be not just a place, but a principle that, from desperate circumstances, can come great purpose, and from individual acts of kindness can grow movements that change the world. To Luke, my chosen grandson, who I know will ensure this message reaches the future, you were never just an heir. You were the proof that our network worked. Your father, unknown to you, was helped by a family James and I aided during the war. The universe has a way of completing circles we begin. Remember always, wealth fades, land changes hands, but the good we do for others ripples through time in ways we cannot imagine. Thunder Ridge was never about the acres or the cattle or even the gold. It was about creating a fortress of hope in a troubled world, a place where dreams could take root and grow. Build your own fortresses of hope wherever you are. The world will always need them. With eternal love and faith in the future, Eleanor Whitmore Calloway. As Emily finished reading, a profound silence fell over the assembled crowd. Then, slowly, people began to stand. First a few, then dozens, then hundreds. They were the living proof of Eleanor's network, descendants of families helped by Thunder Ridge over the generations. Many learning for the first time how their ancestors' lives had been touched by Eleanor and James's quiet philanthropy. Among them stood Maria Rodriguez, whose great-grandmother had been smuggled out of Mexico during the Revolution with Thunder Ridge's help. Beside her was Dr. James Chen, whose ancestor had been sponsored by the ranch to attend medical school in 1920. Near the front, Sarah Williams listened with tears in her eyes. Her family had been sharecroppers, given a fresh start through Eleanor's secret fund. The celebration transformed into something unprecedented. People shared stories passed down through generations, whispered tales of mysterious benefactors, unexpected opportunities, and new beginnings that had always been attributed to luck or divine providence. Emily revealed that modern DNA analysis and genealogical research had confirmed what Eleanor suspected. The Thunder Ridge Network had indeed touched over 1 million lives. The ranch's influence extended far beyond its acres, woven into the fabric of American society in ways no one had imagined. That evening, as the sun set over the Rockies, the family gathered in Eleanor's study for a private ceremony. Emily placed the time capsule letter in a special display case alongside Eleanor's other documents. But there was one more surprise. Hidden in the capsule's false bottom, they found a small locket containing 2 photographs, Eleanor and James on their wedding day, young and full of hope, and another taken decades later at one of their secret reunions, their faces lined with age, but their eyes still bright with love. Engraved inside the locket were the words, "Distance is to love, what wind is to fire. It extinguishes the small and kindles the great." For Luke, The victory was bittersweet. He'd preserved Thunder Ridge, but at the cost of exposing Eleanor's carefully guarded secrets. Yet as he read the public response, overwhelmingly admiring of Eleanor's cunning and bravery, he realized she might have approved. 6 months after the trial, Luke stood before a gathering at the newly expanded Thunder Ridge Agricultural Institute. The main building now bore a bronze plaque, Eleanor Whitmore Calloway Memorial Hall. Eleanor Whitmore was many things, Luke addressed the crowd. Spy, entrepreneur, conservationist, and yes, my grandmother. She built Thunder Ridge through courage, intelligence, and determination. But her greatest legacy isn't the ranch itself. It's the lesson that our past, however complex, can forge a better future. Catherine stood beside him, their daughters in her arms. The twins would grow up knowing their great-grandmother's true story. Not the sanitized version Eleanor had crafted, but the complicated truth of a woman who'd fought wars both public and private to create something lasting. That evening, Luke visited Eleanor's grave. The simple stone now bore her full name, Eleanor Sarah Calloway Whitmore. He placed fresh flowers, the wildflowers she'd loved, and spoke quietly to the woman who'd orchestrated his destiny from beyond the grave. "You could have told me," he said. "I would have understood." The wind whispered through the cottonwoods, and for a moment, Luke could almost hear Eleanor's voice. "Some truths must be earned, not given. You've earned them now." As he walked back to the house where his family waited, Luke reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought him here. What had begun as a desperate man's bargain had become a profound legacy of family, courage, and redemption. Thunder Ridge stood as testament to Eleanor's vision, not just the ranch she'd built through questionable means, but the future she'd secured through sacrifice and love. In protecting her secrets, she'd protected her family. In revealing them at last, she'd freed them to build something even greater. The storm had passed, leaving the air clean and fresh. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but Luke faced them with the strength Eleanor had recognized in him from the beginning. The strength of her own blood, flowing through generations, carrying forward the indomitable spirit of Thunder Ridge. A decade had passed since the Confederate gold trial, and Thunder Ridge had become the crown jewel of Colorado. Ranching. The Agricultural Institute attracted students from as far as Europe, while Luke's innovative practices had revolutionized sustainable ranching throughout the West. His daughters, Sarah and Eleanor, now 13, showed their great-grandmothers fierce intelligence and determination. On a crisp autumn morning, Luke received an unexpected telegram from Boston. "Urgent, Calloway family estate matter. Your presence required. Whitmore family attorney." The name Whitmore caught his attention. Not Eleanor's married name, but her maiden name from Boston. Society. Within days, Luke found himself on an eastbound train, leaving Thunder Ridge in Benjamin's capable hands. Boston proved to be a world apart from the rugged Colorado landscape. The Whitmore family attorney, Reginald Prescott III, received Luke in an office that reeked of old money and older secrets. "Mr. Carson," Prescott began, adjusting his spectacles, "what I'm about to share has been sealed for 50 years. Per Eleanor Whitmore's instructions. The terms stated these documents should be delivered to her heir only after Thunder Ridge had been secure for a decade." He produced a mahogany box inlaid with mother-of-pearl. Inside lay documents that would once again transform Luke's understanding of Eleanor's life. "Your grandmother left the Whitmore family under difficult circumstances," Prescott explained. "These papers reveal why." The documents told an astonishing story. Eleanor hadn't simply been a Union spy, she'd been recruited by Alan Pinkerton himself. Chosen for her photographic memory and linguistic abilities, her mission went beyond tracking Confederate gold. She'd been tasked with identifying a network of Southern sympathizers operating in Northern financial circles. The Whitmore family, it turned out, had been deeply involved in this network. Eleanor's own father had been funneling money to Confederate causes while maintaining a facade of Union loyalty. When Eleanor discovered this, she faced an impossible choice: expose her family or betray her country. She chose country, providing evidence that led to her father's quiet arrest and the family's social ruin. In retaliation, the Whitmores disowned her, spreading rumors that tarnished her reputation and forced her to flee west. "There's more," Prescott continued, producing another document. "This is the deed to the Whitmore estate in Salem. Eleanor inherited it through her mother's family line, but never claimed it. She's left it to you, along with several $1 million in investments she maintained separately from Thunder Ridge." Luke sat in stunned silence. The wealth was staggering, but it was the personal letter from Eleanor that affected him most deeply. "My dearest Luke, if you're reading this, then Thunder Ridge is secure and my life's work complete. What I couldn't tell you in life, I entrust to you now. I sacrificed my family name for duty, my reputation for country, and my daughter, your mother, for her safety. Every choice extracted its price, but I would make them all again. You wonder why I chose you, why I orchestrated our strange marriage. Because in you, I saw the best parts of myself and your grandfather, James. Courage without cruelty, ambition, tempered by compassion. You were never just an heir, Luke. You were my redemption. The Whitmore fortune is yours now. Use it to expand what we built together. Create opportunities for others as I created them for you. And remember, sometimes the hardest choices yield the greatest good. With all my love, your grandmother Eleanor." Luke returned to Colorado with new purpose. The Whitmore fortune allowed him to establish branches of the Agricultural Institute across the West, creating a network of education and innovation. But as Thunder Ridge's influence grew, so did the attention it attracted. One winter evening, as snow blanketed the ranch, unexpected visitors arrived. A delegation from Washington, led by Secretary of Agriculture James Wilson himself, had come with a proposal. "Mr. Carson," Wilson began, "your work here has revolutionized American agriculture. The President himself has taken notice. We'd like Thunder Ridge to become the model for a national conservation and agricultural research program." The offer was tempting. Federal backing would magnify Thunder Ridge's impact exponentially, but Luke had learned caution from Eleanor's example. "What would this partnership entail?" he asked carefully. The details emerged over several days of negotiations. The government wanted to establish a research station at Thunder Ridge, bringing scientists and resources that would benefit the entire region, but they also wanted significant control over the ranch's operations. Catherine counseled patience. "Remember what Eleanor wrote. The hardest choices yield the greatest good, but make sure it's truly good for Thunder Ridge, not just for others." Luke's decision came after a sleepless night walking the ranch grounds. He would partner with the government, but on his terms. Thunder Ridge would maintain its independence while hosting the research station. The Whitmore fortune would establish an endowment, ensuring the ranch could never be fully controlled by outside interests. The announcement made national news. "Thunder Ridge, America's agricultural future," proclaimed the headlines. What they didn't report was the personal cost to Luke, the loss of privacy, the constant scrutiny, the political pressures that came with such prominence. 6 months into the partnership, those pressures intensified. A group of Eastern industrialists, led by railroad magnate Cornelius Blackwell, Harrison's cousin, launched a campaign to discredit Thunder Ridge's conservation practices as anti-progress. "Your grandmother's methods were effective for her time," Cornelius declared at a Denver business conference, "but America needs industrial agriculture, not romantic notions of sustainable ranching." As night fell over Thunder Ridge, The family made a collective decision. They would establish the Callaway Whitmore Foundation for Invisible Philanthropy, dedicated to continuing Eleanor's network in the modern age. Using blockchain technology to ensure anonymity while tracking impact, they would create a platform for people to help others without recognition, measuring success not in dollars or accolades, but in lives changed. The poor cowboy who had married a 75-year-old ranch heiress had discovered the ultimate truth, that the greatest wealth lies not in what we accumulate, but in what we give away. Eleanor's 11-day marriage to Luke wasn't just about securing an heir. It was about ensuring that a legacy of compassion would continue long after the last Whitmore walked Thunder Ridge's halls. Today, visitors to Thunder Ridge can participate in the network experience, using virtual reality to trace the interconnected stories of families helped over 150 years. They leave not just with knowledge of history, but with a commitment to create their own ripples of kindness in the world. And somewhere, in whatever realm exists beyond our own, Eleanor and James walk hand in hand through eternal cottonwood groves, watching as their sacrifice continues to bear fruit in ways they never imagined. Their love story, spanning war and peace, separation and reunion, life and death, stands as testament to the truth that the most powerful legacy we can leave is the good we do for others. The circle that began with a desperate bargain in 1897 continues to expand, touching lives across generations and geography. Thunder Ridge endures, not just as a place, but as an idea, that from the most unlikely beginnings can come the most extraordinary endings, and that love, in all its forms, has the power to change the world. As Eleanor knew when she chose Luke, Carson from all possible heirs, sometimes the poorest among us carry the richest potential, and the most shocking revelations lead to the most profound understanding. In the end, it wasn't what Luke discovered in those 11 days that mattered most. It was what he and all who followed chose to do with that discovery. The thunder still rolls across the ridge, echoing with the voices of all those whose lives were changed by one woman's vision and one man's willingness to embrace a destiny larger than himself. And somewhere in America tonight, someone receives unexpected help from a stranger, never knowing they've just become the newest link in a chain of compassion forged in the crucible of war and tempered by the patience of love. The story ends, but the legacy lives on. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.